Hello there, welcome to this week's episode of the Data Radio Show. In this week's episode, Sam's going to be continuing his conversation with Kaye from DeepWeaver talking about AI guardrails. In particular, this week they're looking at human oversight, asking the question, when AI moves so fast and learns so quickly, at what point is there a bottleneck where we have to come to the reckoning that maybe AI can give itself oversight, and just how close to Skynet does that make us? But before we get into that conversation, first of all, make sure you hit that subscribe button or like the video, or feel free to share it. But we also have an event coming up in Sydney that DeepWeaver's helping us out with, looking at AI and governance roles for things like banking or insurance. It's a really fascinating talk with a whole bunch of experts from across the field that's really, really important for people working in these fields today that are looking at upgrading, changing their systems, or adopting AI anytime in the future. So you can actually check that out. We'll put that link in the description so you can go to the event itself, or you could follow us on School or LinkedIn. We've got it linked in there as well. All right, let's jump over to that conversation now with Sam and Simon and learn a little bit more about human oversight.
Next up is human oversight. It seems like a common sense safeguard, but in a world where AI is making decisions in milliseconds, what does effective human oversight actually look like? And at what point does it become a bottleneck that prevents AI from being useful? And I suppose this is in the context of what we were talking about earlier, where you're going to see new roles emerging, where you have AI stewards, and the levels of transparency that you need to have don't necessarily need to be meaningful to the end consumer, but to whomever it is that has oversight over a system.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of people confuse two things in this stratosphere, which is human oversight versus human in the loop, right? So firstly, human in the loop is having a business process where there actually is let's say it's a legal, you're drafting legal documents, maybe related to conveyancing or mortgage or whatever it is, settlements. And there's someone in the loop that is sort of qualified in that space that actually can see and assess the risk and agree with the model to proceed to the next stage. Right? Oversight is who's fundamentally owns that business process or that business function. And the oversight one's an interesting one because this is the job role that you think there's somebody that owns, retail banking, for example. You're pulling them down a few levels and saying, well, you own the end-to-end process for that, right? Both from an ethical standards point of view, from a regulatory point of view, but from a profit and loss, all of those business aspects. So you're adding another thing, which is this oversight, which is they cannot just say, for my business unit, I'm going to blindly trust what the AI model says because it was built the way I wanted it built, right? So not so much in banking, but if you look at autonomous weapons, if you look at a whole host of different missile guidance systems, all of those things, on that end of the scale, you want the oversight because you don't want to trust the machine. You want the speed of the machine, but you don't want to trust the machine because the outcome could be catastrophic and deadly, right? Not so much in finance, but whilst that balance between speed and meeting ethical standards or meeting business policy and those kind of things, you kind of need both the human in the loop and the human oversight just to be able to intervene if something goes wrong or if something doesn't feel right, or if there's another level of input required, you need to be able to kind of pump the brakes on that solution, right? And it may go back into refactoring to remove whatever that challenge was, right?
I guess the thought that comes to mind here is around managing risk, and this kind of comes back to the proactive use of agents, for instance, in pen testing. So, having a human in the loop or having human oversight actually opens up other opportunities to use AI to help augment that human oversight. So if you're constantly pressure testing a model, using an AI agent in a closed off environment, there is the opportunity to identify risk before something catastrophic goes wrong. So digital twins are an example of that. Other models. I guess there are different ways to think about this human oversight. It's not just purely about putting humans into the loop and having oversight. It's also about how you can proactively use AI as a tool to help you do that job better.
Yeah, so I've seen models emerging where there's a board companion, right? So as the board's making decisions, they have their own oversight AI model that allows them to validate their trajectory and decisions, right? Or help process large information very quickly, right? So if you do that right, you see all layers of executives having, call it the old parrot on the shoulder with the pirate, right? Kind of helping them in their ear, right? So you could use AI in a way to actually augment that role. So you're still doing human oversight, but it's, there's a AI companion that's actually helping augment that and bake the speed back into it, and also assess the risk, right? So what you don't want is your human oversight to be 100% gut based, right? I've been 20
Yeah.
years in this business. I've been running it this long. We always do things this way, because that erodes the quality of your AI portfolio, right? So a little bit like the security one, think of how AI could actually be a companion to those that are accountable in a way that actually, the humans are still performing the function, but they're able to do it with a broad capability of help, right? That
Yeah.
not flicking through boards, flicking through papers and doing all this kind of stuff, looking through PowerPoints. It's delivered to them in a fashion that it's very easy for them to conduct that role, right?
Yeah.
The curators of that is another set of job roles, right? The person that builds the board companion AI model or the EGM companion AI model, right?
Hey, I want to thank Sam and Simon again for today's conversation. It's always really fascinating to me to sit down and listen to experts talk about things that they're passionate about and know a lot about. I learn something every time. Hey, don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button or give the video or the channel a follow or a like, a thumbs up. There's so many different options these days. And if you're still interested in that conversation around governance and AI that I talked about at the beginning of the episode, as I said, you can find that information on our LinkedIn page or our school page, which are all linked in the description down below. Be good for you to get along. You could learn a whole bunch, and I think there's a lunch provided. Pretty sure. I love a good lunch. All right, until next time, look after yourself, live long, prosper, be one with the force, and we'll catch you all next time.